Welcome back to the Private Practice Playbook with Jay Geier. Today, Jay talks about the biggest barriers that keep doctors stuck in a cycle of employee issues and daily stress. He's going to show you how to shift your mindset, set clearer expectations, and start building a team that actually makes your life easier, not harder. You'll learn 5 specific ways to strengthen your human capital, or the value and the performance of the people who make your practice run. It's a powerful conversation that will help you reset expectations, invest in your people, and create a culture that truly performs. So let's get into it.
It's a private practice playbook. It's a private practice playbook.
All right, let's dive in. So today I thought I saw an interesting, my customer service team had given me a summary, and we were talking about what barriers to growth clients had. And so I think there was 20 things on the list, and then I broke them out. So I thought today in the podcast, we'd talk a little bit about, what is it? What are the barriers to growth? And the number one issue, or, like when you line up all these issues, you categorize them, and they end up being in this category we call human capital, which, you guys understand relational capital. I would assume you understand capital, meaning money, like you could actually have resources, but human capital is the value of the humans. And when you think about a practice, it's so interesting. And, really one of the big assets in any practice is the humans. So that includes you, right? And you're really sort of the main human. You're the one with your name on the wall, et cetera, et cetera. So, I thought today what I would do is I would talk about, let's keep it reasonable. I could probably give you 100 different things, but why don't we try to stick this to 5 today? And I'm going to kind of give you a short list. And these are 5 things that you can get to work on immediately that will have a dramatic impact on your human capital. And what's important to understand is that as the owner doctor, you have this entire set of issues. We could talk about control. We could talk about perfection. Lots of doctors are perfectionists. We can talk about expectations. And then when you sort of interview doctors and you say, hey, what's the problem? It's amazing. They get together on the weekends and go to CE courses. And, so what is that? Is it an avoidance technique? And most doctors believe that they either are going to complain about their team or their patients, right? And we'll get into that. And obviously, when you're complaining about your patients, they're sort of a byproduct of your team. And so this is a recurring over and over and over issue, which is how you feel about your staff and how you feel about their behavior and how you feel about their performance and everything related. So I want to give you 5 tips to start to break this down and for you to get better at this, because it is a trap. And so number 1, we start with this, and this may feel like a punch in the gut to you, but it's important that you hear this, right? And that is that the first thing you have to do is to admit that your team is a mirrored reflection of you. And it's amazing how few doctors do it and how liberating it is when you do it. And what that means is that if you're having attitude problems, work ethic problems, energy problems, competency issues, that is all a mirrored reflection of you. In other words, it is what you have allowed to occur. You might actually be doing it yourself and you're completely unaware of it, and they're just following suit, right? It's sort of like if somebody has a child and the child does a negative behavior that you have, nobody's excited about it, but it's clear where they maybe have got the behavior, right? So we have to start there. And I want to talk about this idea of handling things or avoiding things. And I'll just add on this one. So, that you go to the office tomorrow or today or whatever, and look at every behavior and then really instead of being judgmental about it, it's probably a behavior you've modeled. And we see this a lot. We go into a new office and it's like, we're shocked at what we see. And it's because it was what was tolerated by the doctor. And you kind of lose control of this. So another thing I would say in this is that there's a lot of escape behaviors. You know what an escape behavior is? Like an escape behavior for people is doing drinking or doing drugs or bad habits. CE, like these people go off on the weekends and they go to CE and they just want to learn something, but they're like avoiding the fact that they've got a people problem and a customer service problem. And it's not going to get fixed learning how to get better fixing teeth. Okay, number two. So there is no quick fix, okay? Relationships do not quick fix. And you see people pursuing one quick fix after another. The problem gets created over a long period of time. Like we go into an office and the doctor has no control. The patient service is actually bad. The patients don't like the team as much as the doctor would like to think they do. And again, which is a reflection of you, right? The team is a reflection of you. It's a mirrored reflection of you. So you have this habitual, like over all the years I've done this, if I meet somebody, number one, they miss step one, which means they grade higher than they should. Like their self-assessment skills are low. And then they get into this thing of chasing a quick fix, right? And they're running an avoidance strategy. So relationships are complex and relationships change when behavior changes and is consistent for a long period of time. So just to give you some kind of a time frame of this, when you look at how we take a practice to the next level, the first thing I always ask somebody is, how long do you think it's going to take? And when they come up with, what if we commit a day to it? I know immediately that's just not it's not a good customer for me, right? Because I go, they have unrealistic expectations, and when it doesn't work, they'll blame me. So I lose interest real quick. So the only thing I want you to get today is this: as we're, heading for a new year, I'm doing an event on how to have your best year ever, and this is one of the things that I will talk to about people is one of the ways you have your best year ever is you put together one of your best years ever. That's like from a managerial relationship performance, there's actually a way to change, and there's a way to do something different for a 12-month period of time. And, when you do something different, and 12 is sort of the minimum standard, because when you're trying to improve relationships, people can hide, they can escape too. So there is no quick fix. And again, 1 year in the big scheme of time is actually very short. So I actually would say putting a year into it, if you're mature and smart, that's a short period of time. And I tell a lot of people it might take them 3 years.
You listen to Jay Geier every week on the Private Practice Playbook, but what if you could spend one full day with him live and in person? On December 5th in Atlanta, you'll have that chance at the Make 2026 Your Best Year Ever event. This is your moment to step away from the daily grind, focus on your practice instead of in it, and walk out with a clear, proven plan to make 2026 your most profitable, productive, and fulfilling year yet. You'll learn the same strategies Jay has used to help hundreds of private practices multiply growth, boost profitability, and take control of their future. Your best year doesn't just happen, it's the result of a systematic, intentional approach to running your practice. Seats always sell out, so don't wait. Call 470-410-2875 or visit www.bestyearinpractice.com/podcast right now to reserve your spot. One solid day, one proven framework, unlimited growth. That's bestyearinpractice.com/podcast. Your next step toward making 2026 your best year ever.
Okay, number 3. So number 2 is getting your time frame right, thinking about the way you're thinking about it. Think about all the quick fixes that did not work, okay? And then you got to just stop that altogether. Okay, number 3. And this is one that, okay, verbal ineffectiveness and avoidance are not strategies. So you see this a lot. When you get into a practice and you start diagnosing the relationship between the doctor and the team, you find that the team's problem is the doctor's problem is the team, or they have inertia among them, but it's usually based on too much verbal. So in other words, the doctor says a lot, nobody really listens or does anything, and then everyone's avoiding the proverbial elephant in the room, right? And so that is not a strategy. And normally that strategy is it's like if you were on a sinking ship, that's the strategy, where it's like you're screaming and screaming and screaming and no one's answering, okay? So number 3 is that you absolutely normally cannot do this yourself, particularly if you have things to clean up. So there's something strange about doctors that they have this sort of perfectionist, but then this do it themselves. And I think it's pride. It's like your pride gets in the way and you think you have to do it yourself. So when I go about setting off on improving something, I rarely do it myself, because I've learned that what I've got to do is I've got to set myself up. In other words, just the other day, I brought a new instrument into our team. And, so I paid somebody, whatever it was, $10,000 to come in for the day, teach the course, and then I do the follow-up, right? And so if you think about that, I could have said, well, I'll save the $10,000 and I could have taught the course, but I can promise you that the effectiveness of what I did by bringing someone in and me being the supportive character in it, just dramatically different. And that's the way I would do everything. And it's what we teach people, and it's much more effective. So again, versus me finding something and then coming in and giving sort of a half-baked explanation of it and expecting it to stick, right? Because those things don't stick. Instead, I'm smart enough. I bring in an expert, I get the help I need, and then I work around that and supporting it. So, and we've learned this, like one of the keys to how I've made so many practices go up by so many millions of dollars is that we partner with those doctors and we take some of that heavy lifting off of them, and they're playing a complementary role. In other words, when we bring in a professional trainer to train your team, and then you come in as the person who is encouraging implementation, it's almost like that's the bite you can swallow, right? You're trying to swallow a whale when you do the whole thing by yourself. So we want to get away from this verbal ineffectiveness or this avoidance or denial, and we want to get into a well-calculated strategy. So, if you get on the phone with one of my team members, you say, look, I want to put a training plan together. We can put a multi-training plan together over a course of a period of time. And then if you support that, I'd bet you any amount of money, it would blow away you ever trying to do it on your own. But remember, it's those first 2 that get in your way, right? And also, when you're hiring professionals with your practice, anyone who tells you that they're going to do everything for you, that's not really the way it should go. It's a complementary relationship. So I don't own your practice. You own the practice. Things we do are a complement. Okay. So when you look at number 4, right, which kind of leads to this, number 4 is that getting professional training. And the reason this is so important is because now, okay, so I bring somebody in, I have this tool I like, and I want everyone to learn it, use it, engage with it, but I got to bring some professional in, and then I go to, so like they teach the information, and then now my job is only to post it up in the office every time I start a meeting to maybe have a conversation about it. So the standard was set by the professional. So they set standards, right? That's how you begin to create a culture. You can't do culture all on your own. There's just too many things. And what we see in so many offices is you see that like it's almost like a bipolar pattern where the doctor will run off to 3 seminars a year, pick up a tidbit, and then come back and try to implement it all themselves. And then the team just waits it out. And it kind of, so if you should be able to go back and process your strategy or lack of strategy. So, as we get ready to turn the new year, this is a time where I like to ask the question, hey, what's working with this and what's not? And I always want to keep what's working. And then I want to make a modification for what's not working. And, you notice this a lot is really what we call team complacency, which is what would naturally occur in an environment where you don't have professional training. In other words, a good enough standard, or again, sort of almost like a denial. Like I think a lot of doctors, instead of wanting to know whether their team is good, and by the way, it's no patient's job to tell you your team's not good or the experience isn't good. I mean, you cannot expect that from a patient. And if you do, shame on you. You should give them free visits. Like if, a patient comes in and say, listen, I'll comp your visit if you'll just be honest with me about how our service is. You probably learn a lot. So professionals, and then again, what is this pattern of continuing education? What is the number of hours that each team member is trained? You cannot get people to perform at a high level without a serious training protocol. I mean, and this goes in every single aspect of life, right? Think about I bet you your kids, if you have kids, I wouldn't be surprised if your kids' football, soccer, baseball team, as a matter of fact, I know this is true. They get trained more than your team does. And they're theoretically doing it for fun, like hours in, right? So if you take a look at if you have a young kid who does sports or maybe they play an instrument, even if they play an instrument, I bet you that kid gets more training than your team does on an annualized basis. And what some doctors call training is not training. Anytime you're talking to them, you can't, that does not constitute training. And that's kind of one of the fallacies that occurs. Okay, number 5. If you have to be clear on where you're going. This is like, just stop and think about that for a second. Like you have to be able to, so if I was trying to tell you how to have your best year ever, I'm going to break it down on a 3x5 card that you can carry around all year. And I'm going to have you quantify what needs to occur. And I'm going to make sure that it's not just a collection number because, if you just have a collection number, there's an awful lot of things that can go wrong not to make your collection number. There are many leading indicators that you have to have clear goals for if you want to hit that number. So number 5 is actually compensation related to clear targets. In other words, and it starts with you. And so as an example, most doctors that come in for coaching, like I was we had a new class start the other day. And I have this mission, right, which is to help doctors net $1 million. And I'd like them to be generous and give away 10%, right? And so for some doctors, they come in, I get them a 90% pay increase, or so, in other words, a 9 times, pay increase. And I just say, why don't you just give 1% to charity, right? Because that's sort of like my mission in life is to get people to be more generous. And, and generosity starts out obviously by how just training your team is the first form of generosity. But what you find is like, I'll bet you right now, if I said to you, like, show me in writing exactly what your targets are for 2026, most people don't have them. And then if I followed the question up and said, okay, explain to me how when you hit these objectives, who is going to get rewarded on your team? In other words, who on your team is going to be rewarded when you accomplish your goal? So aligning the comp strategy exactly to what you want. And for instance, here's a terrible strategy. And you see this a lot. So you got one overpaid person who's the office manager and everyone else is underpaid. And they're a subpar office manager at best because your practice doesn't make a lot of money. See, that is not a comp strategy. That is naivety. So I'm going to pay this one person a bunch of money. He or she is going to protect me from learning the truth about my team. And then they're going to suppress the wages of the team and they're just going to increase their own personal wages. See, and again, I could move that over to a doctor. I could say, okay, your plan is that you're going to make a lot of money, but you're going to underpay the team and give them no upside and no training, but you're going to make a lot of money. Well, that rarely works out, quite frankly. So you have to figure out a way. So one, you have to be clear. Two, you have to build in enough that you can reward the team. And then three, you have to line up comp. And it needs to be not just one office manager or leader. It definitely needs to have your key leaders have a level of comp, but then it has some level of participation moving down, where we are all thinking about what is in the best interest of the business and putting the business first. And again, you cannot do this when you don't have clarity, okay? All right, so there's 5 things you can get started on tomorrow, all right? So if you want help, call us. We'll make arrangements. You may still be able to get to my event that I'm doing in December, which will go into great detail about some of these things. But until then, have a fantastic day and do what you need to do to make your team better, which may be letting go of them a little bit.
That's it for today's episode of the Private Practice Playbook with Jay Geier. If this message hit home, take action. Start working on those 5 steps to build a stronger, more accountable, and more empowered team. And if you want to go deeper, Jay's Make 2026 Your Best Year Ever event this December in Atlanta will walk you through exactly how to apply these principles to grow your practice and your people. You can find all the details and reserve your spot at bestyearinpractice.com/podcast. Thanks for listening to the Private Practice Playbook. Be sure to follow, rate, and share this episode with another growth-minded doc in your circle. New episodes drop on the 2nd and 4th Thursday of every month, so stay tuned and make sure you're following the show to keep your mind and your practice growing.